There was a morning, I remember it way too vividly. I was sitting in my car, parked outside the grocery store. The engine was still running, but I couldn't move. My debit card had just been declined, not for a luxury item or some online impulse buy, but for a 12-bag of groceries, eggs, bread, a couple of bananas. Nothing fancy. But even that was too much. I wasn't unemployed. I wasn't homeless. On the surface, I was a functioning adult with a decent job, paying rent on time, smiling through small talk in the break room. But inside, I was suffocating. Financially, emotionally, mentally. I kept telling myself I was just bad with money, that some people are naturally gifted at managing finances, and I wasn't one of them. But the truth was deeper and uglier. I didn't even understand what I wanted from money. I just knew I didn't have enough of it, or at least I thought I didn't. Every paycheck disappeared faster than it came. I didn't have savings. I didn't have a plan. I had this gnawing anxiety in my gut every time I checked my bank account, which I avoided like the plague. And I was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. I was tired of feeling like I was constantly behind, like everyone else had figured out some secret I'd missed. People were buying homes, taking vacations, investing in stocks, posting blessed while I was Googling, how much money do I need to feel safe? That day, after I finally got myself together, I went home and just sat. No TV, no scrolling, just me, the quiet, and a question I couldn't shake. What am I doing wrong? I didn't get an answer right away, but a few days later, while browsing through a blog I followed, I saw someone recommend a book with a simple but punchy title, The Psychology of Money. Something about it clicked. Not how to make money, not how to beat the stock market, just the psychology of it, the way we think, the way we feel. And honestly, I didn't even know money had psychology. I picked it up without much expectation, just curiosity. But what I found inside that book didn't feel like advice. It felt like permission. Permission to think differently, to forgive myself for the mistakes I made, to finally understand that money isn't just math, it's emotion, it's history, it's habits and fear and pride and freedom, all tangled together. It didn't solve everything overnight. I wasn't suddenly rich or debt-free or perfectly disciplined. But for the first time, I understood myself. I saw my decisions through a new lens. And that's where change really started. So in this episode, I want to walk you through the biggest lessons I took from the psychology of money and how slowly, sometimes painfully, I've started to rebuild not just my finances, but my entire relationship with money. Because if you've ever felt overwhelmed, ashamed, or just confused about why money feels so hard, you're not alone. I've been there, and I'm still figuring it out. But here's what I know. You don't need to be a genius or a millionaire to feel peace around money. You just need a new perspective. And that's exactly what this book gave me. When I was younger, I thought being wealthy meant having obvious signs of success. You know, Rolex watches, new Teslas, high-rise apartments with floor-to-ceiling windows. I'd scroll through Instagram or watch YouTube influencers and see these people with luxury lifestyles and think, they must be doing it right. That was the image of success that had been fed to me over and over. And because of that, I spent a lot of my money trying to look like I had money. New clothes I didn't need. The latest phone, even though mine worked fine. 6 coffees every morning. I told myself these were little rewards for working hard or investments in my image. But really, they were Band-Aids ways to convince others, and maybe even myself, that I was doing okay, that I had it together. But then I came across this idea in The Psychology of Money that hit me like a truck. Wealth is what you don't see. It sounds simple, right? But it completely flipped the way I thought about money. Let me break it down the way it landed for me. If someone's driving a 100 car, All I know for sure is that they spent 100 zero. I don't know how much they saved. I don't know how much debt they're in. I don't know if they had to empty their entire savings to afford that one status symbol. But before reading the book, I used to look at people with shiny toys and assume they had more than me. Now, I realize they may just spend more than me. That's not the same thing as being wealthy. So I started looking inward. I looked at my own spending and asked, why am I doing this? And I started realizing that so many of my purchases were emotional. I was buying to impress, to distract, to avoid discomfort. I wasn't thinking long term. I wasn't building anything. I was just leaking money. Quietly, but constantly. After finishing that chapter, I made one small decision that would change a lot of things. I deleted every shopping app from my phone. Amazon? Gone. Target? Gone. No more. I'll just browse a bit while I wait in line. No more digital windows tempting me to spend on things I didn't truly need. Then I took it one step further. I set a cooling off rule for myself. If I wanted to buy something non-essential, I had to wait 48 hours. No impulse buys. Just time to sit with the desire and see if it faded. You'd be surprised how many things I didn't actually want after 2 days. And here's the beautiful part. When I stopped chasing the appearance of wealth, I started building actual wealth. I set up a separate high-yield savings account and called it Quiet Wealth. It wasn't for anything specific, just a place to store my progress, to prove to myself that I could grow something in silence. At first, it was slow. 25 here, 50 there. But every time I didn't buy something unnecessary, I'd transfer the money to that account. I'd open the app and see that number grow, not for show, not for anyone else, just for me. It felt like I had a secret superpower. I was no longer trying to impress people who weren't even paying attention. Within a few months, I had my first real emergency fund. 6 months' worth of expenses, something I never thought was possible for someone like me. And it did something even more important than reduce my overdraft fees. It gave me peace. I stopped waking up at night wondering how I'd handle a surprise bill. I stopped feeling like my money was running my life. And maybe for the first time ever, I actually felt rich. Not because of what people saw, but because of what they didn't. So yeah, that one sentence, wealth is what you don't see. It rewired something in me. It taught me that wealth isn't loud. It doesn't have to be shiny. It's quiet, patient, and deeply personal. And it's not about being cheap. It's about being intentional. Because the truth is, you can't build a future if you're busy performing for the present. There's a quote from the book that stayed with me long after I put it down, not because it was clever or complicated, but because it was true in a way I had never really considered before. The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. Now, I don't have millions in the bank. I don't live on a yacht or take spontaneous trips to Europe. But once I really understood what Morgan Housel was saying, I started looking at freedom as the real currency of wealth, and that changed everything. Let me rewind a little. Before reading The Psychology of Money, my relationship with work was, let's call it toxic. I said yes to everything. Every client, every project, every side hustle. If someone offered to pay me, I accepted even if it meant pulling all-nighters or sacrificing weekends. I told myself this was the hustle, the grind, the price of ambition. But really, I was scared. Scared that if I said no, the money would stop. Scared that I wasn't valuable unless I was constantly producing. Scared that slowing down would mean falling behind. And it didn't help that I tied my self-worth to how busy I was. If I wasn't exhausted, I felt like I wasn't doing enough. So I burned out. Slowly, quietly, and predictably. By the time I picked up the book, I was running on fumes. I was making decent money, but I had no time to enjoy it. I had no space to think, breathe, or even figure out what I wanted. My schedule was fully booked, but my soul felt completely empty. That's when this lesson about freedom hit me in the chest. I realized I didn't want more money just to have more stuff. I wanted more money to have options, to be able to say no without panic, to take a Monday off without guilt, to work with people who inspired me, not just those who paid me. So I made a choice. I started saving not just for security, but for freedom. And practically, here's what that looked like. I created a flex fund. This was separate from my emergency savings. It wasn't for car repairs or dental bills. It was money I could use to buy time. Time to rest. Time to explore. Time to say no when a client gave me a weird feeling or wanted to underpay me. That little account, it gave me breathing room. And with that breathing room, I made some bold changes. I cut one of my biggest clients who was draining the life out of me. I took a full weekend off, no phone, no laptop, just hiking in silence. And eventually, I restructured my business so that I worked fewer hours but charged more for what I was truly good at. Was it scary? Absolutely. But you know what was scarier? The idea of living the next 10 years like I had lived the last 10 months, busy, broke in spirit, and completely out of alignment with who I wanted to be. The funny thing is, once I prioritized freedom, my income actually improved. I was more focused. I delivered better results. I attracted better clients. I wasn't desperate anymore, and people can sense that. But the biggest win wasn't financial. It was being able to go out for breakfast with my dad on a random Thursday just because. It was spending time in nature, not checking my phone every 5 minutes. It was waking up and realizing, I don't hate Mondays anymore. That's freedom. It doesn't always look like early retirement or endless travel. Sometimes it just looks like peace, like space to think, like the ability to protect your mental and emotional energy. So yeah, for me, money isn't about buying status. It's about buying choices. And the more intentional I became with my money, the more those choices showed up. The psychology of money gave me permission to want that, to build toward that. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how much money you make. It's about how much of your life you actually get to live. If there's one thing this book helped me finally understand, it's this. Comparison is a losing game, especially when it comes to money. Before reading The Psychology of Money, I was constantly comparing myself to others. A friend just bought a house. A cousin invested in crypto and tripled his money. Someone on LinkedIn landed a promotion and was celebrating with a Bali vacation. Meanwhile, I was trying to decide if I could afford guac on my burrito. It felt like I was behind, like I was failing. I couldn't understand how people my age or younger seemed to be doing so well. Were they just smarter, luckier, more disciplined? But here's what Morgan Housel wrote that shifted my entire mindset. Be careful who you take financial cues from. You don't know what game they're playing. That one sentence made me stop scrolling. Because the truth is, we're all playing different financial games, with different goals, different starting points, and different values. I'll give you a personal example. A few years ago, a friend of mine, let's call him Jason, started trading options. Every time we hung out, he'd talk about the market, about the insane returns he was getting, about how he was planning to retire by 35. He made it sound so easy. Meanwhile, I was just trying to build a small emergency fund. I wasn't even thinking about investing. I was still working through some debt. But the more he talked, the more I started questioning my own path. Am I being too conservative? Too slow? Should I be taking bigger risks? So I downloaded some trading apps. I watched a few YouTube videos. And I put a chunk of my savings into a few trendy stocks. You can probably guess how that went. A few weeks later, I had lost more money than I'd like to admit. And not only that, I felt stupid, like I'd tried to be someone I wasn't. The reality? Jason was playing a short-term, high-risk, high-reward game. He didn't have a family to support. He was okay with volatility. That was his game. But my game was different. I was building for stability. I valued peace of mind over potential windfalls. I wasn't trying to beat the market. I was trying to stop feeling anxious every time I opened my banking app. Once I understood that, I took a step back and got honest with myself. What kind of life did I actually want? What did success look like to my peers, or the internet, or society? And you know what I realized? I didn't want a fast win. I wanted quiet progress. I didn't need to look rich. I needed to feel secure. I didn't want to risk it all for a tank's return. I just wanted to sleep through the night. So I shifted how I approached money. I stopped chasing trends. I unfollowed influencers who made me feel like I was always behind. I got real about my values and started designing a financial plan that actually matched them. I set up automatic transfers to saving $7 if it was just $50 a month. I stopped comparing my timeline to anyone else's. And I made peace with the fact that slow, steady progress might not be sexy, but it's sustainable. Here's the thing. The world will always try to make you feel like you're falling short. That you should be richer by now, have more investments, own a home, start a side hustle, retire early, build generational wealth. But if you try to play everyone else's game, you'll lose your own. What the psychology of money taught me is that financial success is personal, deeply personal. And it has to be tied to your values, not someone else's highlight reel. Since letting go of comparison, I felt freer, more focused, more in tune with what I actually want out of life. I've stopped measuring success by other people's milestones. Because at the end of the day, money isn't a race. It's a tool. And the way you use it should reflect your goals, your needs, and your version of enough. When we think about building wealth, most of us imagine these big, dramatic moments launching $1 million business, making a perfect stock pick, selling a house for double what we paid, right? I used to think that way too. I thought I needed some kind of financial breakthrough, a lucky break, a bold move, a genius idea. I wanted fireworks. I wanted the hack that would change everything. But the psychology of money taught me something way more powerful and way more real. Good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up. And even more than that, Morgan Housel explained how wealth doesn't usually come from brilliance, it comes from patience. From the quiet, steady, sometimes boring act of sticking with something long enough for compounding to do its thing. That lesson? It hit me hard. Because patience wasn't my strong suit. I've always been someone who starts things strong and then fizzles out. I'd set savings goals, get excited for a few weeks, then fall off. I'd open a new investment account, put in $200, then forget it existed. I wanted results now. If I didn't see progress quickly, I assumed it wasn't working and I'd move on to something else. But compounding doesn't work that way. Compounding doesn't reward hustle. It rewards time. It's like planting a tree and expecting shade the next day. That's not how nature or money works. Let me share what changed for me. After reading that chapter, I sat down and made a really honest spreadsheet. Nothing fancy. Just a basic layout of where my money was going, how much I could reasonably save each month, and what it might grow into over 10, 15, even 30 years. At first, the numbers looked small. Insignificant, really. But then I used one of those online compounding calculators, plugged in a modest monthly contribution and an average return over decades. And that was my light bulb moment. Because when you zoom out far enough, small numbers grow into big peace of mind. I realized I didn't need to max out everything right now. I didn't need to be a Wall Street genius. I just needed to stay in the game. Consistently, patiently, quietly. So I started small. I set up automatic contributions to a Roth IRA, even if it was just $100 a month at first. I opened a high-yield savings account and treated it like a recurring bill, non-negotiable. I unsubscribed from get-rich-quick content that made me feel like I was doing too little. Instead, I focused on doing a little but doing it forever. Here's the crazy thing. 6 months in, I barely noticed the money coming out of my account. But when I looked at my balances, I smiled, because there was progress. Not flashy, not viral, but real. That's what compounding does. It's not exciting, it's not headline-worthy, but it's powerful. And over time, something even deeper started to change. My mindset. I stopped needing instant gratification. I started feeling proud of my consistency. And I began to trust the process. Now, when I think about my finances, I don't feel panic. I feel a kind of quiet confidence because I know that even if nothing drastic changes, I'm building something slowly, steadily, strongly. And I remind myself of this often. Warren Buffett didn't build his fortune with magic. He did it with time. His real secret wasn't brilliance. It was discipline and patience starting early and letting compounding do its work. If I could go back and tell my younger self one thing, it'd be this. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to keep going. So if you're listening to this and you feel like your progress is too slow, or your savings feel too small, or you're tempted to quit because the numbers haven't moved much, please hear this. It's working. The good stuff is happening beneath the surface. Compounding is like faith. It doesn't always look like progress, but with time, it builds miracles. Stay patient, stay consistent, stay kind to yourself. Because in money, like in life, small things done consistently matter far more than big things done occasionally. I used to think saving only made sense if it had a clear destination. Like, if I was saving for a car? Sure. For a vacation? Makes sense. Emergency fund? Okay, fine. But just saving? Without a plan? That felt vague, pointless, almost like hoarding. I used to tell myself, money should be working, not sitting idle. And every time I had a little extra, I'd find a reason to spend it or invest it somewhere flashy. It gave me this illusion of productivity, like I was doing something smart with my money. Then I read this line in The Psychology of Money, and it hit me like a splash of cold water. Savings without a spending goal gives you options and flexibility, the ability to wait, and the opportunity to act when the world lets you. That one sentence reframed everything. Because here's the truth. Life doesn't always give us a heads up. It doesn't say, hey, in 6 months you're going to hit a rough patch. Better start saving now. No, life just happens. And the people who survive it best aren't always the ones with the highest income or the smartest investments. They're the ones who had a little breathing room. Let me tell you a story. Last year I got laid off, completely out of the blue. No warning. No slow signs. One Thursday morning, I had a stable job. By Friday, I had a severance packet and a box of my things. And I panicked. Not because I didn't believe I could get another job. I knew I could. I panicked because I had tied all my savings to specific things. A new laptop. A trip I had planned. Some money in crypto. None of it was liquid. None of it was just there waiting just in case. For the first few days, I couldn't sleep. I started canceling subscriptions, pausing plans, tightening every part of my life. I felt like I had failed. But then, I remembered something. About 6 months earlier, after reading The Psychology of Money, I'd started a little side savings account. I didn't label it. I didn't earmark it. I didn't even think about it much. Every time I got paid, I just siphoned off 5%. Not for anything, just because. I called it my margin fund. My don't touch, but don't forget it's their account. So I logged into that account, and I nearly cried. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough. Enough to cover 3 months of rent. Enough to give me breathing room to look for jobs without desperation. Enough to let me think clearly, instead of scrambling in survival mode. And I realized that's the power of purposeless savings. That little cushion bought me something far more valuable than stuff. It bought me time. It bought me clarity. It bought me the ability to make decisions from a place of strength, not fear. I took a couple of weeks to reset. I updated my resume, reached out to my network, and eventually landed a freelance gig that paid more than my previous job. I never would have been in the right headspace to spot that opportunity if I had been in panic mode. That experience taught me this. You don't always need a reason to save. Sometimes, just in case is reason enough. Because just in case comes for all of us eventually. A job loss, a medical bill, a broken car, or even a surprise opportunity, a last-minute ticket to a dream conference, a chance to start a business, or support someone you love. And when that moment comes, you'll either be ready or not. Since then, I've doubled down on that habit. I still save for specific things, sure, but I also keep adding to my margin account, no questions asked. It's not flashy. It doesn't get praise on social media, but it saved me more than once literally and emotionally. So if you're listening to this and you feel like your savings don't have a job yet, that's okay. They will. Eventually, life will hand you the bill or the opportunity, and you'll be grateful that you planned for neither, but were prepared for both. That's what wealth without a purpose really means. It's the silent strength in the background of your life. And trust me, when the time comes, it speaks volumes. Looking back now, it's hard to believe how much has shifted not just in my finances, but in the way I think, the way I live, the way I breathe. Before reading The Psychology of Money, I was living in a state of quiet panic. I didn't look like a financial disaster from the outside. I had a job, I paid rent, I smiled at work and showed up on time. But inside, I was exhausted. I was stuck in a constant mental loop of guilt, scarcity, and second-guessing every decision I made with money. And the worst part? I thought that was normal. I thought adulthood just felt that way, that money was always going to be this source of stress, confusion, and low-grade shame. But then I read this book. And no, it didn't hand me a 10-step plan to get rich. It didn't tell me to follow a budget to the penny or throw all my cash into stocks. What it gave me was so much more powerful. It gave me perspective. It gave me permission to think differently. It made me realize that money isn't just numbers, it's deeply emotional. And if we don't understand that, we'll always feel like we're failing, no matter how much we earn. Since applying what I learned, I've changed in ways I never could have measured with a bank statement. I no longer chase the next big thing because someone else is doing it. I no longer feel behind because someone else bought a house, or launched a business, or paid off all their student loans. I've stopped treating money as something that defines my worth and started treating it as a tool to build the life I actually want. Now, my decisions are rooted in intention, not insecurity. I track my spending not out of fear, but because I want to know my values are aligned with where my money's going. I invest steadily not because I'm chasing riches, but because I believe in my future. I save even without a clear reason. because I know life is unpredictable and that flexibility is one of the most underrated luxuries out there. Emotionally, I've noticed something subtle but powerful. I'm calmer. I sleep better. I feel lighter, like I'm not carrying this invisible weight on my shoulders all the time. I'm no longer afraid to talk about money. I don't avoid looking at my accounts. I don't feel shame when things aren't perfect. Instead, I approach my finances like I approach my health, with care, consistency, and grace. Has everything gone perfectly since reading the book? Of course not. Life is still life. Unexpected bills still show up. Emotions still flare. But now I have tools. I have a framework. And, most importantly, I have faith in my ability to adapt because I've seen myself do it. I think one of the most underrated gifts this journey gave me is clarity. Clarity about what success really means to me. Clarity about the fact that I don't need to win some invisible financial race. Clarity about the kind of life I want to live and how money can support that, not distract from it. If I had to summarize the change, I'd say this. Before, money controlled me. Now, we have a healthier relationship. I respect it. I don't worship it. I don't ignore it. I work with it. And that change didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. And if it happened for me, it can happen for anyone. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. You don't have to be perfect with money to feel at peace. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a six-figure salary or a color-coded financial spreadsheet or a flawless investment plan. You just need awareness and the willingness to shift your mindset one small thought at a time. If you're listening to this right now and you're feeling behind, ashamed, stuck, or overwhelmed, I've been there. You are not alone. And more importantly, you are not broken. Maybe your bank account isn't where you want it to be. Maybe you've made some financial choices you regret. Maybe you're living paycheck to paycheck and wondering if anything will ever change. It can. It does. But the change doesn't start with another hustle or a new budget template. It starts with a mindset shift. For me, that shift came when I realized that money isn't about numbers. It's about behavior, about emotion, about who we are and what we believe. Once you understand that, everything starts to feel a little less heavy. You can let go of comparison. You can forgive your past mistakes. You can start small like I did and know that's still enough. So, if you're wondering where to begin, I'll tell you what I wish someone told me. Start by paying attention. Ask yourself, what do I believe about money? Then ask, is that belief still serving me? Start by saving 10 a week if that's all you can do. Start by tracking what you spend, not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. Start by reading books like The Psychology of Money, not to learn tricks, but to gain perspective. Because perspective is everything. And if this episode gave you even a sliver of that, a moment where something clicked, or a sentence that made you exhale a little, then I'm glad you're here. I'm not a financial expert. I'm just someone who's been through it, stumbled, kept going, and found some clarity along the way. And if that's where you are too, then you're doing better than you think. Hey, if this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Drop me a message. Leave a comment. Share this with someone who might need a quiet reminder that they're not behind, they're just on their own journey. And if you're open to it, hit that follow button or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I've got more stories, lessons, and honest reflections coming your way soon. Until then, take care of your heart, your mind, and your money. You deserve peace, and you're capable of building it one small, patient step at a time.